Hey guys, I am John from Born to Produce, and I'm going to continue where Jay left off, and we're going to continue building the rest of our beat. So we got our lovely kick pattern, and the first thing I want to add to that is a snare. So if I go over to our media bay, obviously we got a kick drum selected in the category, so I'm going to click that to sort of deselect it, and then I'm going to click on snare drums, which will just isolate all of the snare drums in this sample bank. And there's some quite nice snares in there. I'm just going to audition a few until I find one that I like. That one's quite nice. It sounds quite housey, so I'm going to drag that into our arrangement, and I'm going to stick that on the second beat. So pretty much in every genre of music, the snare always falls on the second and fourth beat, with very rare exceptions to that rule. So generally speaking, always the second and fourth. So I've got my snare on the second beat there. So I'm just going to turn down the snare a bit, and just remember that that is actually linked to the mixer volume as well. So as I move that, that moves the mixer volume, just so you're aware. And I'll just hide that lower zone again, so we've got more room in our arrangement window. And then I'm going to copy this across to the fourth beat as well and play that. And there we go, it's starting to shape up and actually sound like a house beat. So that snare's okay, but I think it could be a little bit faster, so I'm going to layer it with a clap sound. Now in this Groove Agent library, some of the claps aren't all in the snare category. Some are, but some aren't. So I'm just going to click on snare drum again in the category selector to deselect the snares, and I'm going to hit percussion and find in here that we've got quite a few clap sounds. And just find one that I like, and I quite like that. It's got a nice sort of tail on it. So I'm going to drag that into the arrangement, and it's going to go in exactly the same position as the other two snares. And again, I'm going to turn that down a bit, and I'm going to hold Alt and drag that across so it's matching the position of the first two snares. Now I do like that tail, but I don't want it to be playing every single time, so I'm going to shorten this second clap here. So what I'm going to go and do is turn off the snap, and I'm going to go to this control point at the far right hand side and drag that in, so it's taking off most of the tail. And just to make sure that there's no sort of nasty clicks or pops, I'm just going to drag in the right hand envelope as well, just slightly, just to make sure that that's a nice smooth transition at the end there. And when I play it, there's one last thing I want to do to these two snares. As they're being layered together, I want to introduce a bit of a stereo effect to the track, and I'm going to pan these slightly apart from each other. So in order to do that, we can use the panning controls over here, and you can also access those panning controls from the mixer. So I'll just show the lower zone again, and that's the panning controls there. It's exactly the same, but I'm just going to use the one in the inspector for now because it's just a bit easier. So make sure the track is selected with the first snare on. Hold down the Alt key, and we're going to drag the left hand control point in to about, let's say 56. L56 for that, and then we're going to click on the clap, and I'm going to hold down Alt again and click on that control point on the right hand one and bring that so it says R56. So basically matching the other snare, just in the opposite direction. And then when I play them, they just got a very slight stereo separation now. So the snare's nice. Just could do just one more little thing. I just want to make it a little bit more funky and add a bit of extra movement to this beat before we start adding hats and everything. So I'm going to find a clap with a bit of a lead in, and I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. Let's just find a clap. That one's perfect, so I'm going to drag that into the arrangement. And again, I've got my snap turned off at the moment, which means I've got free movement, which is ideal for what I want to do. So if I just zoom in a bit onto this track, so I'm going to make this track a bit bigger, so just by dragging down the bottom part there, and I'm going to zoom in a bit. So I'm going to do it by holding Control and using my mouse wheel. And here we can see this clap doesn't start right at the beginning of the waveform. So if I pop it there like it would normally do if you had it snapped to the grid, when I play it, it sounds a bit funky because it's not in line with the other two snares. So I'll just literally just drag that around So it's the main chunk of this clap is actually lined up with the other two snare and claps. Zoom in a bit, just make sure I'm getting this really accurate. That's about perfect. And what I want to do is actually just keep this first bit and ditch the whole sort of second half. So I'm going to turn my snap back on. So I'm going to right click in the arrange window and I'm going to select my split tool. And then I can just literally click and split it. Now I'm going to select the mute tool, which is a little X. And I'm going to mute the second part of this snare. So there we go. You can see it's been grayed out, which means it's been muted. And I'm just going to drag in the left-hand envelope a bit to make this nice and smooth. And again, to stop any sort of clicks or pops, I'm going to very, very slightly drag in that right-hand envelope as well. Okay, so when I play that, and you can hear it just kind of gives it a bit of a sort of push when it goes into the second beat there. It kind of zoops into it. Okay, so that's cool. Time to add a hat. I'm going to go over to the media bay and click on percussion to deselect that from the filters, and I'm going to go up a bit and find hi-hats. Now first off, I want to load in a sort of fairly closed hi-hat, a very short hi-hat. We'll be adding a more sort of open sounding hi-hat later on, but for now we just want a short one. So I can just audition a few of these until I find one that I like. I like both of these actually, so what I'm going to do is I've got one selected, I'm going to hold down shift and I'm going to select the one above it as well. And then I'm going to drag both of them in at the same time to the arrangement. It's going to ask me if I want to import those to one single track or two different tracks. I want to put them on different tracks for now, so click that. And if you get any import options, just click OK, that's fine. Okay, so it's given me my two hats on different tracks, and I can see by the waveform which ones these are. I can see that, you know, the one is slightly longer than the other. This short one for now, I'm going to just mute. Okay, so I don't want to hear that in the arrangement as of yet. And I'm going to I'll just select both of them and turn them both down a bit so I don't get any nasty surprises. So the hat in house music will pretty much always go on the offbeat. It's part of the sort of rhythm of house music. So you get this sort of sound. Now, in order to put it on the offbeat, you're going to need to change the quantize from 1/4, so that's snapping to every beat. And you want to be able to go in between each beat, which is the offbeat, and you select 1/8, and then you can draw that in. We're going to leave that first one out for a second. And then we're going to copy across, again holding Alt, clicking and dragging. So we've got a hat on every offbeat in the bar. And there you go, it's really starting to take shape and actually really sound like a house beat now. Okay, so let's introduce this second hat in, this much sort of smaller sounding hat. And we're going to funk up this beat a bit. So I want to add a sort of swingy type feel to this beat. So I'm going to go up and select the quantize setting as 1/64th, which means this whole bar is divided up into 64 bits. And I'm going to drag this in so it's actually 3/64ths from that first hat. And then I'm going to copy that over and leave it so it's 3/64ths in from the very end of the bar. Now when I play that, you can really hear it's got that sort of funky house type feel to it. Now I'm just going to tidy this up very slightly, and I'm just going to drag in these ends here just so it's not overlapping the end of the bar. It's just going to neaten things up a bit later on. You don't have to do this, but I like to. And just to make things a little bit neater, we're going to do a bit of tidying up, and we're going to colour our kick so it's a different colour from the drums, so nothing, doesn't get all confusing with the whole arrangement being in green. So to change the colour of something, you just come up to sort of middle of the area on the track there, hold down Alt and click, and then you can select a different colour from the menu. So I'll change the kick to orange, and I'll leave the rest of the drums as green. And to make it even tidier, I'm going to basically put the rest of these drums into a folder track, which can then be minimized, so it's just taking up less space and makes things nice and neat and tidy. So I'm just going to select that top snare and then hold down shift and click on the bottom drum there, and then I can right click those and hit move selected tracks to new folder. And there we go, it's created a folder track for me. So it's put all of these inside of this folder track. And I'm going to change that folder track color again the same way. So just go to the middle there, click holding Alt, and then select green, whatever color you want. And then I can easily just click on the folder icon and that will minimize all that lot down. They're all still there, they're just hidden. Just makes it nice and neat. Okay, so now we've got our sort of main part of the drums in there. I'm going to just zoom out a little bit. I'm going to select that lot and I'm going to copy it across, but at the moment it's obviously a bit too fine now, the control. I've got it on 1/64th, the controls there. So I'm going to change that back to a bar, select it and then copy it. And I'm going to select all that lot again and copy it one more time and set my loop region so I can change the size of that by grabbing this control point on the right hand corner, just dragging that across. So now I have 4 bars of house beat. And just to make things a little bit more interesting, I want to actually add just a sort of slight fill at the end there. So I'm just going to expand the folder track again. And where we've got our muted snare, I'm going to use this and I'm going to reverse it and just stick it right at the end there, just to make things a little bit more interesting and keep the song flowing along. So I'm going to turn my snap off again and just drag one of these across, hold down the right mouse button and hit the mute tool, and then unmute the clap. And then go back to my selection tool and then up in audio. So make sure you got your clap selected, and then we go to audio, processes, and then reverse. That's going to ask you if you want to change all of the events which are in there, or if you just want to change a singular event. Now, of course, I don't want to reverse every single version of this clap because some of them are used for other things and they need to be the way they are. So I just want to change this one. So I just click on new version, and what I'm going to do is just drag this so it's right at the end there. I'm going to zoom in quite a bit just to make sure I get this in there. That's close enough. And when I play that, so it's a little bit loud at the moment, so I just want to turn it down, but of course I want to turn it down without affecting the volume of the other things on this track. So in order to do that, I can change the volume of each individual instance by clicking on this middle control point here and just dragging that down. You can see that that just changes the volume somewhat. So I'll drag it down to about there and play it to find out. A little bit too quiet, so let's make that a little bit louder. And that's about right for now. So I'll zoom out again, close my folder track, and then there's one last thing that I want to do, and that's I want to add an open hat, a nice big housey sort of open hat. Just want to find a nice sort of housey sounding hat. And that sounds quite nice. I'm going to drag that into my arrangement. At the moment, snap's turned off, so we're going to turn that back on. So I want to get this nice and precise. And again, zoom in to the first bar a bit. Now the hat in house music, as I mentioned, always goes on the offbeat, so I just need to change the quantize settings to 1/8 and move that so it's on the offbeat, turn it down a fraction. Now I need the second hat to fall on this second offbeat, and you can see there when I've copied it across now it's got a bit of an overlap, so I want to change that. So I'll undo that, and then I'm going to turn off the snap again and just drag in this right hand envelope a bit to about there. And just to make sure everything's smooth again, I want to bring in the envelope point just a bit to make sure that's a nice smooth transition. And again, turn my snap back on. I've got it on 1/8, that's perfect, so I can just copy that across. And when I've got 4 of them in there, I'll highlight them and copy them across. And again, highlight and copy across. And then we got and there we go, we've got our 4-bar loop. Okay, so now we've got our nice neat drum beat. We are now ready for Jay to start building the melody with you, okay? But before we do that, we're going to do something super important, which is save the project. So go to File, go to Save As, and it'll automatically take you to the folder that you created when you first started the project. And we're going to call this the Cubase Beginner Course, and hit Save. And then there we go, we're all nice and safe, so if anything happens, then we got our project backed up. Now, if you're really interested in programming drums and you want to go into a lot more depth, you want to check out our drums masterclass tutorial, which teaches you everything about programming house beats, drum and bass beats, and everything you need to know about programming your own beats. So go check that out if you're interested. Please feel free to ask any questions you like in the comments section below. And if this video was helpful to you, then please do like it, share it, and subscribe. So that's it for this lesson. In the next lesson, Jay is going to take you through how to make a melody really easily in Cubase. Thank you for watching.